Hey guys, thanks for doing this. For starters, I guess for Calvin and for Michael, when a team with sort of championship ambitions loses earlier than they expect to lose, I think there's usually kind of externally a lot of pressure to basically make major changes afterward. How do you two kind of audit this season and the way it ended from a perspective of reacting to it versus kind of exhibiting patience, I guess, in the balance between those two things?
Well, I think you always want to take time to let everything sink in and go back and take a quality look at everything that happened during the season and then make decisions from that point. So I don't think at this point, less than a week removed from losing, I don't think any decision has been made to this point. Excuse me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The emotional reaction to losing cannot force you to make emotional decisions. And we lost the other night, and I asked my staff a question. I said, was this season a failure? And if you look at it solely from the lens of winning a championship, yeah, we failed in that regard. But the season wasn't a failure in my eyes. We did a lot of great things this year and lost a tough Game 7 at home to a quality opponent. But when you do lose, it forces you to look within and find out ways to be better. And that's something that we always do, win or lose, after each season. How can we be a better team next year? From within, from a coaching standpoint, from a player development standpoint, from a draft standpoint, whatever it may be. So wasn't the outcome that we all wanted, we realized that, but I still have a tremendous amount of confidence and faith in that group across the board. And to sit up here with Josh and Calvin and for us to be united and on the same page with that is really all that matters.
For all three of you, what did you learn about defending a title that you wouldn't have known until you were in it this season?
It's really hard. You know, my father did it in Detroit many years ago. Josh has been around, and his dad have been around a lot of teams that have won. And going from being a team that is hunting to being the hunted, and teams around you building and getting better with the sole purpose to dethrone you, winning back-to-back proved to be very, very, very hard.
You know, for me personally, you know, the three of us were just upstairs talking about it, kind of reflecting on the last, 8-9 months or so. But, you know, I have a whole level of respect reserved for groups of people and teams that are able to go win a championship. I have a whole nother level of respect for teams and groups of people that are able to repeat. You know, it's an area of our growth that we entered for the first time this year. I've experienced it some with our other sports, but when you go as Coach said, from being the hunter to being the hunted, it's a big adjustment mentally. And I think as a group, maybe we thought we were ready for it, but you're not really fully ready for it until you really experience it. I think you heard our players kind of over the course of the season and even reflect upon, even reflect after the season was over on Sunday night, the adjustments that they needed to make mentally from going from the hunter to the hunted. And that's something that we're going to go back to being the hunter. We now have another solid chip on our shoulder, which wasn't there, 12 months ago this time, or 11 months ago. I guess we hadn't won it yet. But I'm excited to see what the group can do to come back with that sort of motivation and this type of experience underneath them.
Calvin, I guess, when you look back at this roster, everything we've heard from is, about mentality and the challenges of repeating. But is there anything from a skill perspective you felt like the roster could have used more of, whether it's shooting, size, defensive ability, ball handling, anything like that?
I mean, we've talked about this a lot upstairs. The general manager front office job oftentimes is to make sure the long-term view is something that we're happy satisfied with, and Coach Malone's down there in the trenches trying to win every night. And a lot of times those things are aligned, but sometimes they ebb and flow out away from each other. And in my view, from where we started a couple years ago when we changed over most of the roster, we had to get bigger, we had to get more skilled. The first draft was a lot of defense. Last year's draft was a lot of shooting. Obviously, those guys are rookies and oftentimes not ready to play. Julian Strother got to play some this year. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well for a period of time, but I think he's going to be a great shooter. So I think more than anything, they need more seasoning. And we need to get in the gym. They need to play summer league. They need to get stronger. Obviously, maybe in our top 7, we can use a little bit more talent. Maybe there's a way to upgrade 1 or 2 positions and get a little bit more, get a guy that's a more accomplished NBA player for whatever slot they're taking. But I don't see anything that's like crazy out of sorts for our roster, to answer your question.
It just, as Calvin says that, I saw Michael Porter's comments the other day, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that I couldn't disagree with Michael more. I don't want Michael Porter putting the series loss on him. We win together, we lose together. Michael is a huge part of our team. We do not beat the LA Lakers without Michael Porter's stellar play, efficient play. And we as a team had a tough series. We as a team did not shoot the ball well. And I love the fact that Michael's kind of taking ownership of that, but it's never placed on any individual. And I just want to make sure everybody was aware of how I felt. I respect Michael for saying that, but we all lost. It wasn't just on one person.
Question is for Coach Malone. Benefit of hindsight, obviously, you get the entire season as a frame of perspective. Is there anything potentially over the course of the last 6 months that you would have approached differently, just knowing sort of where we ended up at this point?
Tough to answer right now, obviously, with Sunday night still being fresh in the memory. But I'm sure, Ryan, as I do continue to reflect on the past season, and there were so many positives, to tie a franchise record, 57 wins, to have the second best home record in the NBA, the second best road record in franchise history, to be one of 3 teams to finish in top 8 of offensive and defensive efficiency, number 2 in clutch wins. But none of that matters when you lose in the playoffs, right? I mean, it's like, that's all fine and dandy. Those are regular season stats. And right now, this team is, when you don't win a championship, we understand that the season is considered a failure for many people. But I'll reflect on that. I know I gave it all that I had and tried to help our guys. And the greatest challenge I could say for me this year was, as you try to repeat, you have your starting lineup and you have a bunch of young players. And how do you marry that and meld that together? And obviously Christian Brown played the entire season into the playoffs. Peyton Watson played the entire regular season, played some in the Lakers series, did not play much in the Minnesota series. And Julian played the first 36 games of the year before having an MCL sprain, which kind of limited his playing after he came back from that injury. So obviously, you wish he would have gotten maybe a little bit more experience this year going into year 2. But overall, my initial reaction, Ryan, would be just a lot of positive thoughts on the season. But I'll continue to reflect and challenge myself to be better next year, like I always do.
Michael, and this is for Calvin as well, but there is a 6 seed, a 5 seed, and a 3 seed in the conference finals right now. Is there something about the league and how it's evolving that being a top seed maybe is less valuable than previous eras? And then secondly, coming out of the All-Star break, that was something we heard repeatedly about. It's about health, it's about playing the right way going into the playoffs, not necessarily seeding. How do you feel the team, now in hindsight, how do you feel the team managed that, the rest versus seeding conflict?
Well, let me see. The first question, I think it speaks to the parity in the NBA. I think it speaks to the quality of depth in the Western Conference, especially. We're the only team to make the playoffs 6 years in a row. No one's even close to that. And for the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed to be out watching the Western Conference Finals, I'm not watching, but it speaks to the parity and the excellence across the board. Dallas at the trade deadline, they went all in. I mean, they traded picks, they traded players to get P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. And then, you have a team in Minnesota that we knew who they were last year. We beat them 4-1, in the first round, and a lot of us felt that that might have been the toughest series that we played. And we knew not Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels did not play in that series. So all I can say, Adam, on that front is I think the Western Conference is a deep, deep, deep conference, and parity is alive and well. How do we handle the conflict of the postseason push after the All-Star break? Well, on one hand, we got the 2 seed. And on the other hand, I'm watching our players play in Game 7 the second half, and our guys look dead tired. They did. And I think you guys probably saw the same thing. So did I run our players into the ground? I'm sure that's definitely part of it. Much was asked of Jamal, KCP, Michael, Aaron, and Nicola especially. And we were not afforded the opportunity like we were last year to rest players down the stretch. This was a different season. And that was a decision we made, and we lived with it.
Coach and Calvin, speaking of bigs and bench, how do you guys see the future of Zeke Naji and Vlatko Cancar in terms of contributing next year, and how can they help you?
Well, we'll get a great chance to evaluate Vlatko this summer. He'll be ready to play in the Olympics. The qualifiers, if they're able to get out of those qualifiers in Athens, he'll be available to play in the Olympics, and I believe he'll be playing in those qualifiers. So Vlatko's a smart player. He can play multiple positions. Coach knows him and trusts him a bit. And, Zeke is a young player that's, he brings energy to the game. He gives an effort every night, and he's trying to grow into both sides of the ball. I think like originally drafted him to be a 4. He's ended up playing a lot of 5. I don't think it matters as much off the bench, but there's certain matchups where it becomes a little bit more problematic. He has to get better. He has to be ready for his opportunities when they come. I think he's going to have a good NBA career. The one thing about Zeke Naji and his family is they're high achievers. So whatever success looks like for him in the NBA, he'll have it. Just yet to be determined, right? So that's kind of my take on those 2 guys. I think, obviously Joker is one of the best players in the league, and if I'm coaching, I want to leave him out there for 48 minutes, right? So, it becomes a little bit harder for subs to get in there.
Yeah, I'll leave it with what Cal said. Thank you.
All right, this is a little broader than just basketball, and it's for Josh. You've been on parade with the Avs and the Nuggets the last couple of years, so I want to get a little travel itinerary for you.
It's a lot more fun when there's a parade, if that's the question.
Yeah. Last week, where were you for Avs, Arsenal, Nuggets? And how has the last week been for you?
I'll answer the second part of that question by saying the last week has been pretty brutal. That's the only way I can describe it. I was with the teams every night, and then I left to go to London last Saturday. So unfortunately, I was unable to be here for Game 7. These guys all knew that well in advance. I was there for Game 6. I was down in the locker room afterward, making sure everybody knew that needed to get their heads up. We got a big one coming on Sunday. But yeah, sports, as much fun as it is at times, and as well as you can make you feel emotionally, it can pull you back the other way. But at the end of the day, it's why we do it. Do it to be side by side with guys like this, trying to figure out how the group can go out and achieve something special. And when you do achieve something special, it makes all these little moments worthwhile, because you can see what it can do for a city like Denver, and to feel the love of those 2 parades that we had, in summer of 22 with the Avs and then the summer of 23 with the Nugs. That's the motivation to keep it going, for sure. But yeah, it can be pretty brutal. Yeah, I was finishing up a few things with the Arsenal group after we had just missed out on the Premier League title, and I was watching on an iPad, and it was, as I joked with these guys, I don't know if I'd rather have been there by their sides, and that's where I know I would have wished I would have been, but being there by yourself in a hotel room several thousand miles away was pretty brutal as well. So yeah, it was tough.
Question for Josh and Calvin. a lot of fans will look at rosters and the way they're constructed and say, well, just go get that guy or this guy. Can you explain to just the common fan why it's so difficult to navigate roster construction given the salary cap you're at right now and where you are on the luxury tax?
I'll start, and then I'll let Cal add a few tidbits, but I think one important footnote about this group of men that we have down in the Nuggets locker room is the core of this team was assembled under a different CBA. And we drafted, we developed, and we built this team under a different set of rules. Those rules have kind of changed on the fly. Last summer, it wasn't quite as pertinent as it is going to be this summer, coming off of a championship and some of our contractual situations last summer. But we're going to put our heads together and figure out how we can keep improving. We have the best player in the world. We think we still have the best starting five in basketball, even though we fell just short this year. Could have gone either way up until the last few minutes. So we don't think we're far off. But there is going to be some constraints coming in with the new collective bargaining agreement and the new rules that we're going to have to be very aware of, and we're going to have to plan accordingly. And they do make it difficult to retool a championship roster on the fly. But that's why we got Calvin.
Well, yeah, just to pretty much go off of what he said, I think, the teams that have been proven to have long-term success evolve or start out as process-oriented teams. And you can go the one or two avenues. You can go get minimum guys and try to get what you can out of them. And if you have tax issues, those guys, if they have good seasons, they're not going to be on your team the next year. Or you could try to draft and develop guys that you can have in your system for a number of years. And me personally, I believe a lot in continuity. And I do believe that the guys that are worth having oftentimes you have to draft, like as witnessed by Jamal and Nikola still being on our team, Michael Porter Jr. still being on our team. I don't think, I wasn't here, but I think they filled in many calls the moment Nikola started to play pretty well. and many trade offers, and I think they rebuffed every single one of them. So, I don't think these guys are that easy to get unless you draft them. So that's the way I view things, and obviously we're going to have a lot of conversation on how to approach roster building, but I'll continue to be the guy that thinks, growth and development is the way to go, and the league is kind of changing. You're seeing all these teams playing a variety of young guys. Last year, Coach Malone did it with Christian. He won a finals game for us. He was a rookie. It's often thought that rookies couldn't contribute in the finals, right? So I think we're heading to new territory based on the CBA and based on the skill level and basketball acumen of these 23-year-olds, 22-year-olds that are coming to the league.
This is for Michael. Also curious, Calvin, your thoughts, but how do you evaluate Jamal's season? I think he's had, in my opinion, an inconsistent last 5 years, obviously with the injury, but is missing on average about 20 games a season. What is it that's contributed to that? Is it bad luck? And how do you feel he can approach that next year to maybe mitigate that?
Well, I have no idea why, he's missed the games he's missed. Obviously, the injuries have been the injuries. Are they all a byproduct of the original ACL injury? I'm not really sure. That's a question better suited for somebody that actually knows what the hell they're talking about. So I'm not going to be that guy that says I understand why, but what can Jamal do to help himself out? The hope is not just for Jamal, but when you lose in the playoffs like we did this year, that has to motivate you. That's got to resonate deep within you to come back a better player, to come back a better coach, for us to come back a better team. And for Jamal, obviously, we don't beat the Lakers without Jamal, right? 2-game winners. But you look at Jamal's numbers last year in the playoffs compared to this year, the efficiency, the productivity was just on a completely different level. And that's why we won it last year. You have Nikola, but you had Jamal playing out of this world. And just trying to find ways to get Jamal healthy and back to playing at that consistent level. And the only way you can do that for any player is to being in the gym and working and having a routine and having routine discipline with your body, with your game, with your craft. And again, I know you asked about Jamal, but that's for all of us. The sting of losing a Game 7, we lost 3 home games. So that's got to motivate you to find ways to improve. And knowing Jamal the way I do and how prideful he is and the competitor that he is, I fully expect him to come back and be ready to go from day one and get off to a great start to the season. And I think that will lead to him having a terrific bounce-back season and us having a season that we can all be proud of.
Yeah, I seem to look at it, you mentioned 5 years, I would look at it more in a 2-year window, and had a remarkable season in 22-23. The first year back from ACL, managed to get himself back to full health and playing at an extremely high level in the playoffs, high enough where we were able to finish off and win it, right? This year was a little bit more up and down, missed a lot of games with some soft tissue injuries and injuries of the other sorts. I think, to Coach's point, we all have to study and look at what we could do better, maybe look at past history, but maybe for Jamal, as an individual, I haven't been a player like Jamal's been. He's a high level, one of the better players in the NBA. Like, do you look at what other great players have done, other great guards have done after they won a championship, you know, and try to prepare in that manner, right? Like, I think you have to do some investigating on what that looks like to be able to make it through a season after playing all the way into June. You know, if Jamal's in shape and in condition, he's a totally different beast. You know, obviously wore down a little bit into the playoffs. Anthony Edwards is maybe the best on-ball defender in the NBA. He was going to have to be in condition to get off the ball, move around a lot more, and run him around. I don't know if playing since last June, coming off the ACL, some of the soft tissue injuries he had, if he was in condition to do that in the series. So something to investigate going forward.
KCP could opt out of his contract, become a free agent. Would you guys be cool going into the second apron to bring him back, or is that something you want to avoid at all costs?
Well, me personally, we spend a lot of time looking at second apron and all this other stuff. I think for me personally, it's win a championship, 1, 2, we have to look at the overall financial picture, and 3, second apron. And I know the second apron is daunting and there's all kind of restrictions, but I don't think that's first on our priority list. KCP's been a great addition the last couple of years. We obviously would love to have him back. We're going to take a hard look at what that looks like.
Calvin, you mentioned some of the young players being really key in you guys getting back to where you want to be. How do you approach the summer with Summer League with some of those young guys? And you have a first-round pick there this year. What do you think you guys are maybe thinking about for the draft, you know, about a month out here?
Yeah, we're still fairly early in the draft process as far as like the college season has ended, the international seasons are coming to a close. The combine ended over a week ago, around a week ago, and I just got back from California Pro Day, so we'll get with our staff and continue to have conversations about what to do with our pick, trade up, trade down, look to trade out. We're going to be flexible about what we think about doing, and the young guys we have in the building, they just have to continue to work and get better and take advantage of opportunities presented to themselves.
Phenomenal success last couple of years in drafting and developing. You can see it in Christian Brown. I mean, great draft choice, good development with your staff. Where do you see his future? Is he a future starter in this league, and is he ready to do that now?
He obviously has the intangibles and the physical strength and athleticism and defense, and he's going to have to make some improvements as he has shooting the ball, but I don't know how you could see a player in the second year that's done what he's done and not think he has a chance of starting. He's ahead of schedule in that regard. Now, how the next few years play out for him, we'll see, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love CB. Toughness, tenacity, aggression, and when he just kind of plays his game, he can impact the game. And to Calvin's point, I think Christian Brown, it's always going to come down to one thing. To be a shooting guard in the NBA, you got to be able to make shots. It's the bottom line. So if you want to simplify CB's future as a starting two guard in the NBA, it will be determined upon his ability to be a 38 or above three-point shooter. And if you look at the playoffs this year, really interesting. I think in the first round against the Lakers, I don't think he made a three. Second round against Minnesota, he shot 40. No, he's not a high volume shooter, but if he's taken 3 or 4 a game, he shot around 42%, I believe. So he has the ability. He puts the time in. He's a gym rat. He's tough. He's a winning player. And I know when the game is on the line, that guy is willing to do whatever it takes to win. So sometimes you can get so caught up in percentages and the analytics. But I think Tom Brady said it years ago, the greatest analytical stat is not a number, it's a letter. Christian's a winner, and he knows how to get dubs. So I love him. I'm so thankful that he's a part of our team, and he will continue to get better and better. And depending upon his work, that will determine the answer to your question, kids.
For Michael and for Calvin, Coach, you mentioned no one should have to go through as a human being probably what Michael had to deal with family-wise with it. But I'm curious to get both you guys' take because his name is in the news again now as we look ahead in the offseason. What's the ceiling there? What more is there to get to for Michael Porter Jr.? What do each of you think he has to do to get there, to get to that next level for him?
Well, I think the first thing that had to happen was he had to get his body to the point where he had the durability to make it through majority of NBA season. Back-to-back years, he's played a crazy amount of games. So, I think that's been a revelation for a lot of people in the league, and including us, quite frankly, because considering some of the takes on his medical coming out of Missouri, a lot of people thought he wouldn't be playing right now, right? So I think he's done a fantastic job in building his foundation and being able to play in a lot of games now. He's continued to mature as a player, become more sophisticated. There's games this year where he had several assists where that wouldn't have happened years ago. I think he's tried to get better at team defense. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA. And people know that now. So how do you free yourself? Do you run harder? Do you set more screens? Do we look for you in more different kind of ways to get you in different areas? I mean, there's a lot to do with that. But try to develop into a two-way player. Because, as you get deeper into the playoffs, teams start to get more and more desperate about how to get a basket. You don't want to be that guy that they're trying to find. And I think he's really worked hard at that and come a long way.
Well, I mean, the first things that pop into my mind, 81 games played this year, dealing with all the family issues that were in the public eye. And for him to be able to compartmentalize all of that and go out there and do his job at a high level is just astonishing. So I have to start off by saying that about Michael. Just proud of and inspired by his ability to handle all of that and do his job. When people think about the Lakers series, they're going to talk about Jamal's 2-game winners. Michael Porter was incredible in the Lakers series. Just look at the stats, the efficiency, the productivity was outstanding. And we talked earlier about, obviously, the Minnesota series was a tough series for him. I told him maybe after game 1, Jaden McDaniels had always guarded Jamal when we played them. Game 1, they had McDaniels on Michael. So Michael, that's a sign of respect. They know for them to beat us, they have to shut you down. And he got that great smile that he has. Yeah. For Michael Porter to max out his talent on top of the health, as Calvin talked about, and he's shown tremendous growth from year 1 to this year, understanding he hates coming out at the end of games, hates it. And he doesn't want to be the guy that teams target. He wants to be a guy that I can trust out there defensively. So can he defensively continue to grow and mature team defense as well as individual defense? He is an elite shooter. He's a very, very good rebounder, one of the best rebounders on our team. The playmaking ability. He's drawing such a crowd. Can you make a play for somebody else? But Michael's been a huge part of winning a championship and everything we accomplished this year. And I love the arc that he's on because he's not flattening out. There are no plateaus. He's getting better. Offensive discipline, defensive awareness, and as a coach, that's all I can ever ask for. You're willing to buy into and commit to everything I'm asking you to do, and I think all of his teammates also see that, and that's why when Michael has a great defensive possession, the team is so excited for him, because that's all you want. Try, man, try, and Michael's done that. So proud of Michael, and we got to challenge him to continue to find ways to be better.
Calvin, if you guys are unable to keep KCP around, how, if it at all, will that impact how you view keeping the other 4 starters together?
I don't think one has anything to do with the other. We're going to try to put ourselves in the best position possible to win it next year. I think we all talked all along about that D word, man. And after losing the second round of playoffs, you don't want to say it, but winning it or giving ourselves a chance to win it next year is pretty important if we think we can be up there with some of those teams that have won multiple championships, right? So we're going to try to put the best team we can out there next year to try to finish it.
Josh, just to follow up about the CBA, I'm not even from a KCP sort of specific standpoint. I'm curious for your sort of philosophy on the second apron. But some of the consequences of being in it, both short-term and long-term, are pretty punitive. So I'm curious if you've kind of established if there's a championship window, we can kind of work around that. If you leave that up to Calvin as much as you can, or how you kind of approach what those consequences could end up being over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're talking about some of the penalties that the league has put in on the fly, involving the second apron, things of that nature, it's very onerous when you start talking about possibly, foregoing future draft picks if you get caught in a certain place. Some organizations, they'll be happy paying whatever they could to have the potential to win a championship. When you start talking about draft picks, that's when you get people's attention pretty quick. Last summer it wasn't something that was as prevalent heading into this summer, but I said it 2 years ago at a press conference when I was doing it by myself. And I don't know how many people took me seriously at the time because we hadn't actually won it. But when Nikola Jokic is on your roster, you're going for it. You have the best player in the world, and you have a responsibility to him and the group to try to go for it. So for Nikola, for Jamal, for Michael, for everybody that we've kind of grown and developed over the course of time, I think that's our responsibility. There's obviously different conversations that come along with going for it when you start talking about some of the penalties that we're talking about, but we're going to be aggressive. We still think we still have one of the best teams in the league with a really good chance of winning it next year.
Michael, with how much basketball Nikola Jokic has played over, the last several seasons, and he could be playing in the Olympics this summer too, how big of a point of emphasis do you think will be next season to just lighten the load that he has to carry, during the regular season at all? If that's playing him less or, just making sure he's as fresh as possible for the playoffs later in the year.
Well, yeah, obviously with the Paris Olympics coming up, and I'm not even sure what Nikola's final decision is in regards to playing. But if he does play, that's more miles on that body. Somebody sent me a stat. The last 5 or 6 years, I think Nikola's played the second most minutes in the NBA, behind Jason Tatum. A lot of miles for a big guy. So yes, probably have to be a little bit more smarter about some of the decisions we make, and making sure that when we get to the playoffs, he's mentally, physically ready to go and give us his best effort. But it's not just Nikola. I'll be honest, when I looked at it there in Game 7, Nikola wasn't the guy that I looked at and said, wow, he's exhausted. I think there are other guys. So much was asked of Aaron Gordon this year. Much was asked of KCP and Jamal and Michael. So I think just a collective kind of, all right, as a coach, we were talking upstairs and Josh said, as a coach, I'm thinking, how do we win the next game? That's my job. And Calvin, as a GM, is thinking about how do we win the next couple of years? That's his job. And Josh is overseeing all that, and understanding how to piece all that together. And that's what I love about being a part of this team, is that we're all working together. So I have to sometimes take my head up from the bunker and say, okay, it's not about just winning the next game. It's about how do we win this season? And if that means resting guys a little bit more, lessening their load, the minutes, the games played, we'll have to look at everything across the board. so that when we do get to the playoffs, that you give yourself your best chance. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.